Clara stared at the crisp, white document resting on the polished mahogany table, understanding that a single signature would erase 10 years of her life. The boardroom of Apex Innovations sat on the 42nd floor, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling glass that offered a sweeping view of the city skyline. It was a view Clara had paid for with countless sleepless nights, missed holidays, and relentless dedication. Yet, the two people sitting across from her looked at her as if she were a trespasser who had wandered in off the street. Marcus, the CEO and her former business partner, adjusted the cuffs of his tailored Italian suit. He wore his success loudly. From the heavy gold watch on his wrist to the custom leather chair he leaned back in. Beside him sat Valerie, the newly appointed vice president of operations. Valerie was 5 years younger than Clara, dressed in a sharp designer dress, her tablet positioned perfectly in front of her. Clara, by contrast, wore a simple beige knit sweater, comfortable dark slacks, and a pair of practical leather loafers. Her worn canvas tote bag rested on the floor next to her chair. She didn't look like a founder. She didn't look like the brilliant systems architect who had written the core algorithm that made Apex millions. To Marcus and Valerie, she just looked like dead weight. "We need to wrap this up, Clara," Marcus urged, tapping his expensive pen against the glass table. "The transition team is waiting. This is a very generous severance package, $50,000 and a clean break. Most people in your position would be thrilled." Clara did not touch the pen. She kept her hands folded neatly in her lap. The severance package was a joke. Apex was currently valued at over $30 million, largely due to the proprietary data routing system Clara had built from scratch. But Marcus had always been the face of the company, the charismatic salesman who brought in the investors. Over the years, he had slowly, methodically diluted her influence, replacing her engineering team with corporate managers like Valerie, who specialized in buzzwords and cost-cutting. 50,000, Claire repeated quietly, her voice steady and devoid of the panic they clearly expected. "For a complete transfer of my remaining 30% equity." "Let's be realistic," Valerie chimed in, offering a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "The company has outgrown its startup phase. We need executive leadership with a specific presence. Your technical skills were valuable in the beginning, but Apex is moving into enterprise acquisitions now. We need a modern image. You've been struggling to keep up with the corporate culture." Corporate culture, Clara knew, meant attending lavish networking parties, wearing $5,000 outfits, and agreeing with Marcus's increasingly reckless financial projections. Clara preferred to do the actual work. "So," Clara murmured, looking at the buyout agreement, "you want me out today?" "It's best for everyone," Marcus answered smoothly. "You sign the equity transfer, take the check, and you can take a nice, long vacation. If you fight this, the board will simply vote to dilute your shares in the next funding round anyway. You'll walk away with nothing. I'm offering you a soft landing, Clara. Take it." Clara looked at the document, feeling the cold weight of the room pressing against her. They thought they had her cornered. They thought they knew everything about the company they were so eager to steal. But as Clara reached for the pen, a quiet realization settled over her. They were about to make the most expensive mistake of their lives. Building an empire from a cramped basement hadn't required designer suits, but apparently taking it over did. Clara remembered the early days of Apex vividly. Before the glass walls, before the 42nd floor views, there was just a damp room in a shared co-working space where she had written the thousands of lines of code that formed the Nerve system. Nerve was the ultimate logistics software, capable of predicting supply chain bottlenecks before they happened. Marcus had been a struggling sales rep when they met. He had the charm, the contacts, and the ambition. Clara had the product. They had formed a partnership, but Clara, focused entirely on the technology, had let Marcus handle the legal paperwork, the incorporation, and the board appointments. It was a mistake born of trust, one she had slowly come to regret as the company grew. As revenue skyrocketed, Marcus's ego inflated. He began taking sole credit for Nerve in industry magazines. He hired Valerie to streamline operations, which essentially meant freezing Clara out of high-level meetings. Valerie had made it her personal mission to undermine Clara at every turn, commenting on Clara's unassuming clothes, her quiet demeanor, and her reluctance to engage in office politics. "Are you reading it, or just staring at it?" Valerie asked, breaking Clara's thoughts. Valerie checked her phone, clearly annoyed by the delay. "We have an all-hands meeting in 20 minutes to announce the leadership restructuring. We need this finalized." Clara turned a page in the thick legal binder. "I like to know what I am signing." "It's standard boilerplate," Marcus sighed, leaning forward, resting his elbows on the table. "You are transferring your shares to the holding company. You waive your right to sue for wrongful termination. You hand over all company assets, keys, laptops, access badges. In return, the funds wire to your account by end of business today. It's clean. It's simple." Clara scanned the dense paragraphs. The contract was aggressive. It stripped her of every title, every protection, and every connection to the Apex brand. It was designed to erase her completely, ensuring Marcus and Valerie could claim full ownership of the company's success right before they finalized their rumored merger with a massive tech conglomerate. "You've been trying to push me out for 8 months, Marcus," Clara noted, her tone conversational, free of anger. Ever since the Horizon Group started talking about an acquisition, Marcus stiffened slightly, but quickly recovered his polished smile. "Business is business. Clara, Horizon wants a cohesive executive team. They want aggressive growth. You're an engineer, not a CEO. You should be proud of what you helped start. But it's time to let the adults steer the ship." Clara didn't flinch at the insult. She simply continued reading. She didn't need to shout to prove her worth, nor did she need to beg for a place at a table she had bought and paid for with her own sweat. She knew her value, even if the two people sitting across from her were blind to it. As she flipped to the final page of the contract, her eyes caught the exact phrasing she had been looking for. A small, almost imperceptible shift occurred in her posture. She picked up the heavy pen. The silence in the boardroom was designed to break her, but they forgot she was the one who had originally selected the soundproofing for these very walls. Marcus and Valerie sat perfectly still, employing a classic negotiation tactic. Let the silence stretch until the weaker party caves under the pressure. Clara felt the cold metal of the pen in her hand. She examined the signature line. "If I sign this," Clara asked, looking up directly into Marcus's eyes, "I have absolutely no remaining authority over Apex Innovations. I cannot make decisions. I cannot access the company funds, and I cannot direct the engineering team. Is that correct?" "Sine," Valerie offered a short, patronizing laugh. "That is generally what stepping down means, Clara. You will be a private citizen. Apex will be entirely under Marcus's jurisdiction, and the company assumes all operational responsibilities from this exact minute forward." Clara pressed gently. "Yes, Clara," Marcus replied, his patience clearly wearing thin. "We assume all responsibilities, all assets, all liabilities. You walk away free and clear. Just sign the paper so we can all move on with our day." Clara looked at the document one last time. She didn't feel the crushing defeat they expected her to feel. Instead, a profound sense of clarity washed over her. For years, she had carried the weight of Apex on her shoulders. She had fixed the server crashes at 3 a.m. She had managed the frantic client calls when Marcus overpromised features that didn't exist. And she had quietly held the entire infrastructure together, while Marcus and Valerie played corporate dress-up. If she signed this, she wouldn't be losing a company. She would be dropping a massive, unmanageable burden squarely onto their laps. "I see," Clara murmured. "We don't have all day," Valerie warned, checking her smartwatch. "The Horizon acquisition team is expecting a finalized capitalization table by noon. We can't proceed with the merger if there's outstanding equity disputes." So that was it. They needed her out immediately to close the mega deal. They were likely going to sell Apex for $50 or $60 million, and they wanted her 30% share distributed between the two of them before the ink dried. Clara positioned the pen over the paper. She didn't hesitate. She didn't look up to deliver a dramatic speech about fairness or loyalty. She simply pressed the tip to the paper and signed her name in bold, fluid strokes. She flipped to the second page and initialed, then the third. With every stroke of the pen, she watched the tension drain out of Marcus's shoulders. Valerie practically vibrated with excitement. Already envisioning her massive payout from the upcoming acquisition, Clara closed the leather-bound folder and slid it across the smooth glass table. It came to a stop right in front of Marcus. "Done," Clara stated calmly. Marcus let out a long breath, a triumphant smirk spreading across his face. He pulled the folder closer, opening it to verify the signature. Satisfied, he closed it and slid it to Valerie. "Excellent," Marcus declared, his tone instantly shifting from persuasive negotiator to commanding boss. "Valerie will handle the filing. Now, as per the agreement, I'll need your company laptop, your security badge, and your phone." Clara reached into her tote bag, but the power dynamic in the room had already irreversibly shifted. She just didn't know if they were smart enough to realize it yet. People who never read past the summary always assumed the details didn't matter until the details destroyed them. Clara pulled her heavy company laptop from her bag and set it gently on the table. She unclipped the plastic security badge from her belt and placed it beside the computer. Finally, she withdrew the sleek company-issued smartphone, placing it neatly in the row. "Everything is wiped of personal data," Clara informed them. "The master passwords for the administrative dashboards are saved in the encrypted drive. Julian has the backup keys." Julian was the head of IT, a meticulous worker who Clara had personally hired and trained. He was one of the few people in the building who actually understood how the nerve system operated. Marcus scooped up the badge and phone, sliding the laptop toward Valerie. The polite facade he had maintained for the last 20 minutes vanished completely. "You have 15 minutes to clear out your desk," Marcus ordered coldly. "I don't want you lingering and upsetting the staff. We have a cohesive narrative to present at the all-hands meeting, and your presence will only complicate things. Security will escort you to the lobby." "That won't be necessary," Clara replied. Standing up, she slung her simple tote bag over her shoulder. "I only brought what I need. My personal items were cleared out over the weekend." Valerie looked up, narrowing her eyes. "You packed up already? You knew you were going to sign?" "I knew we were reaching a conclusion today," Clara corrected smoothly. "I prefer to be prepared." She didn't tell them about the hours she had spent in her home office over the past month, reviewing original incorporation documents from 7 years ago. She didn't mention the quiet conversations she had held with her own independent patent advisor, or the specific way she had structured the software architecture back when she and Marcus were still operating out of that damp basement. Back then, Marcus hadn't wanted to pay the legal fees to properly transfer Clara's personal intellectual property into the newly formed Apex LLC. "Just give the company an exclusive license to use it," Marcus had said at the time, trying to save a few $1,000s. "We'll sort out the actual IP transfer when we have real money." But they never did. Marcus got distracted by marketing, expansion, and his own ego. He assumed that because the company paid for the servers, the company owned the code. He had never bothered to read the original foundational licensing agreement. Clara had. She had read it very, very carefully. "Goodbye, Marcus." "Valerie," Clara offered, her voice light and entirely free of bitterness. She turned and walked out of the glass boardroom, her sensible loafers making quiet sounds on the hardwood floor. She didn't look back to see them celebrating. She didn't need to. The real impact of her departure wouldn't be felt for another few minutes, and she wanted to be comfortably sitting in the lobby coffee shop when the explosion happened. Giving your enemies exactly what they demand is the most dangerous move you can make, provided you know exactly what you are handing over. Clara walked through the bustling open-plan office. Several engineers and junior developers looked up from their screens, noticing her lack of a security badge. A few offered hesitant waves, sensing that something significant had just occurred. Clara smiled warmly at them. She had always liked the team. It wasn't their fault the executive suite had turned toxic. She reached the elevator banks and pressed the down button. Through the glass walls of the conference room at the far end of the floor, she could see Marcus and Valerie standing up, shaking hands, practically glowing with victory. They had done it. They had ousted the awkward, stubborn founder who didn't fit their glossy corporate image. The Horizon acquisition was practically a done deal. The elevator doors chimed and opened. Clara stepped inside, turning around to face the office one last time. As the silver door slid shut, cutting off her view of Apex Innovations, she pulled a secondary, older cell phone from her pocket, her personal phone. She opened her email application and composed a new message. To Julian, head of IT, Apex Billing Department, Apex Hosting Solutions subject revocation of IP license and server access. As of 10:45 a.m. today, my employment and affiliation with Apex Innovations has been officially terminated. Consequently, pursuant to the original licensing agreement dated 7 years prior, the exclusive license granting Apex Innovations the right to utilize the Nerve core architecture is hereby revoked. As the sole registered owner of the intellectual property, I am initiating a standard access lock on all primary databases. Apex Innovations is no longer authorized to host, sell, or operate the Nerve software. Best regards, Clara. She hit send just as the elevator began its descent. She wasn't being malicious. She was simply following the letter of the law. Marcus had demanded she sever all ties and surrender all assets. Clara had done exactly that. But the asset she surrendered was merely a shell company. The actual product, the multi-million-dollar software that the Horizon Group was trying to buy, belonged to her. Down in the ground floor lobby, Clara walked past the security desk and entered the small, artisanal coffee shop attached to the building. She ordered a black tea, paid in cash, and found a quiet table in the corner. She set her tote bag down, took a sip of her hot tea, and watched the main elevators. The countdown had begun. It wouldn't take long for Valerie to try and access the system to prepare her presentation for the all-hands meeting. It wouldn't take long for the screens on the 42nd floor to go entirely dark. The ink wasn't even dry before the masks fully dropped and the eviction began. But up on the 42nd floor, the victory celebration was unexpectedly brief. Inside the boardroom, Marcus poured himself a glass of sparkling water, adjusting his tie in the reflection of the glass. That went smoother than expected. I thought she'd cry or threaten to call a lawyer. Valerie scoffed, opening Clara's surrendered laptop. She doesn't have the backbone for a legal fight. She's an introvert who got lucky with a good piece of code. Horizon is going to be thrilled she's gone. Now we can finally rebrand the interface without her complaining about functional integrity. Pull up the active client roster, Marcus instructed, pacing the room. I want to highlight the upcoming Horizon integration for the staff meeting. We need to show them that without Clara dragging her feet, we can double our processing speed. Valerie typed rapidly on the keyboard, bypassing the initial login screen using the master credentials Julian had provided earlier. The familiar blue loading screen of the Nerve system appeared. Valerie navigated to the administrative dashboard, ready to pull the data. Instead of the usual sprawling lists of client accounts, revenue projections, and live server data, the screen flashed black. A single, stark white text box appeared in the center of the display. Access denied. Critical error 401. License expired. Hosting privileges revoked. Valerie frowned, tapping the enter key a few times. That's weird. The system must be running an update. We don't run updates during business hours, Marcus snapped, stepping behind her to look at the screen. Refresh it. Horizon's tech auditors are supposed to be given remote access this afternoon. Valerie hit refresh. The same error message remained. She tried opening a different module, the billing software. It loaded perfectly, but all the associated client data, which was tethered to the Nerve core, showed up as 0. The data is gone, Valerie murmured, a hint of confusion creeping into her voice. It's completely blank. The billing system is there, but there are no clients attached to it. What do you mean, gone? Marcus demanded, his voice rising. Call Julian now. If she put a virus on this computer before she left, I will have her arrested. Valerie grabbed her phone and dialed the IT department. Julian answered on the first ring, his voice sounding tight and extremely stressed. Julian, what is going on with the admin dashboard? Valerie demanded. We have a critical error across the primary servers. I know, Julian answered quickly. Valerie, the whole floor is locked out. Every engineer, every developer. The core architecture has been unmounted from our servers. The code is just gone. Marcus snatched the phone from Valerie's hand. Julian, this is Marcus. Restore from the backup immediately. Clara is playing games. There was a heavy pause on the other end of the line. Marcus, I can't restore it. The backup drives are empty. And I just got an email from Clara's personal account. Read it, Marcus ordered, a cold sweat beginning to form on the back of his neck. Julian read the email aloud, detailing the revocation of the IP license. When he finished, the boardroom was dead silent. That's impossible, Marcus breathed. We own the code. Apex owns the code. Marcus, Julian's voice trembled slightly. I'm looking at the server registry logs right now. The master domain for Nerve was never registered to Apex LLC. It's registered to Clara's personal LLC. We've just been paying her server hosting fees for 7 years. If she revokes the license, we don't have a product anymore. We just have an empty office. A crown is just a piece of metal if you don't know how to rule the kingdom. Marcus dropped the phone onto the glass table. It clattered loudly, breaking the stunned silence in the boardroom. Valerie stared at the blank laptop screen, her perfectly manicured nails hovering uselessly over the keyboard. She can't do this, Valerie whispered, the reality of the situation slowly draining the color from her face. Horizon is buying Apex for $30 million. They are buying the software. Horizon is buying a software company, Marcus corrected, his voice dangerously low. But it turns out we aren't a software company. We're just a marketing agency that was renting someone else's tech. Panic began to set in. If Horizon discovered that Apex didn't actually own the IP for Nerve, the acquisition would instantly evaporate. Worse, they had just signed a contract agreeing to take on all of Clara's liabilities and releasing her from the company entirely. By forcing her out, they had legally severed the only thread connecting Apex to its only valuable asset. Call her, Marcus ordered, his breathing growing shallow. Call her right now. Get her back up here. Valerie grabbed the company phone Clara had left behind, but realized it was wiped. She fumbled for her own phone and dialed Clara's personal number. Down in the lobby coffee shop, Clara watched her older phone light up on the small table. The caller ID flashed Valerie's name. Clara took a slow, deliberate sip of her tea, letting it ring. She counted to 5, then calmly reached out and pressed the red decline button. Upstairs, Valerie cursed as the call went to voicemail. She declined it. Try again, Marcus yelled, completely losing his polished executive composure. He marched toward the glass doors of the boardroom. Where did she go? She couldn't have gotten far. She said she was taking a vacation. Valerie panicked. Dialing again. Marcus, what if she gets on a plane? What if she sells the license directly to Horizon? She knows all their executives. She sat in on the technical reviews. Marcus stopped dead in his tracks. The thought hit him like a physical blow. Horizon didn't care about Apex's branding or Marcus's sales pitches. Horizon only cared about the algorithm. If Clara walked into Horizon's headquarters today and offered them the software directly, they would buy it from her in a heartbeat, completely cutting Marcus and Valerie out of the deal. Security, Marcus shouted, rushing out of the boardroom and down the hall toward the main reception desk. Call lobby security. Don't let her leave the building. He was sprinting now, his expensive leather shoes slipping slightly on the polished hardwood. Employees peered out from their cubicles, bewildered by the sight of their CEO running through the office in a panic. The confident, arrogant man who had smugly slid a severance check across a table just 20 minutes ago was completely unraveling. He hammered the elevator call button repeatedly, realizing with sickening clarity that the woman he had treated like an obsolete employee had been holding the keys to the entire kingdom the whole time. You can buy a house, but if you don't own the land underneath it, you are just a temporary guest. The elevator ride down felt like an eternity for Marcus. When the doors finally opened to the expansive marble lobby, he sprinted past the security turnstiles, wildly scanning the crowds of professionals filtering in and out of the building. Then he spotted her. Clara was sitting calmly in the corner of the coffee shop, finishing a pastry, her worn tote bag resting on the chair beside her. She looked completely undisturbed. a stark contrast to Marcus, who was flushed, sweating, and breathless. Marcus stormed into the coffee shop, ignoring the stares of the baristas and other patrons. He slammed his hands down on Clara's small table, making her teacup rattle. "Turn it back on," Marcus hissed, his voice a desperate, ragged whisper. "Whatever trick you're playing, turn the servers back on right now." Clara calmly picked up a napkin and dabbed the corner of her mouth. She didn't flinch. She didn't shrink away. She simply looked at him with the mild curiosity of someone observing a frantic animal. "I can't do that." "Marcus," Clara answered softly, "I no longer work for Apex Innovations. I have no authority to operate within your company network." "You own the license," Marcus ground out, his knuckles turning white against the table. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You hid the IP ownership." "I didn't hide anything," Clara corrected, maintaining her quiet, steady tone. "The corporate structure and the licensing agreement were drafted 7 years ago. You were CC'd on every email. You signed the original operating agreement. The fact that you never bothered to read the foundational documents of your own company is not my responsibility." "We built this company together," Marcus pleaded, trying a different tactic, realizing threats wouldn't work. "Clara, please. Horizon is going to audit the tech at 2 p.m. If the system is down, they'll pull the $30 million offer. We will lose everything." "You will lose everything," Clara clarified gently. "I stepped down. Remember, I transferred my equity. I took the $50,000 buyout. I have a clean break." "I'll rip up the contract," Marcus said frantically, reaching into his jacket. "We can go back upstairs. We can tear it up. You can have your 30% back. We'll give you 50%. Just turn the license back on." Clara shook her head slowly. "You don't understand. Marcus, I don't want to be partners with you anymore. I haven't wanted to for a long time. You and Valerie made it very clear that my presence was a burden. I simply agreed with you. You demanded the company. I gave it to you." Valerie burst into the coffee shop, clutching her tablet, her designer dress looking suddenly absurd in the context of their panic. "Did she fix it, Marcus? The clients are calling. The shipping manifests are completely frozen." "She won't fix it," Marcus growled, stepping back, looking at Clara as if seeing her for the first time. Clara picked up her tote bag and stood up. "As per Section 4 of the buyout agreement you drafted, you assumed all operational liabilities. Good luck explaining the server outage to the clients. Valerie, panic is a quiet thing at first, a cold realization before the shouting begins." As Clara stood up, Valerie stepped in front of her, trying to block her path. "You can't just leave. We'll sue you. We'll tie you up in court for years. You stole company property." Julian, the head of IT, who had just stepped off the elevator and hurried into the coffee shop, caught the end of Valerie's threat. He looked pale, holding a stack of printed server logs. "She didn't steal anything, Valerie," Julian said quietly, handing the papers to Marcus. "I ran the trace. I pulled the original tech transfer agreements from the archive. Clara is right. She holds the master patent for the nerve architecture. Apex was operating on a revocable end-user license. And according to the buyout contract you guys signed an hour ago," Julian swallowed hard, "you formally terminated that license when you severed her employment." Marcus stared at the papers in Julian's hands. The reality was undeniable. It wasn't a glitch. It wasn't a hack. It was an airtight, perfectly executed legal reality. "What do we do?" Valerie asked, her voice cracking. "Julian, can we rebuild it?" "Rebuild it?" Julian let out a hollow laugh. "It took Clara 4 years to build the core algorithm. By the time we code a fraction of it, every client will have sued us for breach of contract, and Horizon will have laughed us out of the boardroom." Marcus looked at Clara, his arrogance entirely gone, replaced by a hollow, sinking despair. He was holding a company that owed millions in office leases, payroll, and client guarantees, but produced absolutely nothing. He had engineered his own perfect destruction. "What do you want?" Marcus asked, his voice defeated. "You didn't do this just to watch us burn. You want something. You want to sell it to Horizon yourself, don't you?" Clara adjusted the strap of her canvas bag. I already spoke with Horizon's technical director last week. They were never interested in Apex's marketing or your executive team. Marcus, they were only interested in the code. I've already agreed to license the software to them independently through my own new LLC. Valerie gasped, covering her mouth. You've been planning this. I was planning to leave quietly, Claire admitted. I was tired of the disrespect, tired of the toxic culture you two built. I would have negotiated a fair transition for the IP, but then you tried to force me out and steal my life's work for pennies. You forced my hand. Clara looked at Julian, offering him a genuine smile. Julian, my new company will need a lead infrastructure director starting Monday. If you're tired of working for a marketing shell, my offer is in your personal inbox. Julian blinked, looking from the devastated Marcus to the calm, composed Clara. A small, relieved smile touched Julian's face. I'll check my email. Clara, thank you. True power doesn't need to announce its departure. It simply leaves, taking the oxygen with it. Marcus stood frozen in the middle of the coffee shop, clutching the worthless printouts. The $50,000 check he had so smugly offered Clara was nothing compared to the massive debt he was now personally responsible for. He had wanted total control of Apex, and now he had it a sinking ship with no engines and no lifeboats. Valerie was already tapping frantically on her phone, likely calling her own contacts, trying to figure out how to jump ship before the Horizon deal officially collapsed and the client lawsuits began rolling in. The loyalty between the two executives was dissolving in real time. You won't get away with this, Marcus said, though it sounded like a hollow echo rather than a threat. I already have, Clara replied softly. She turned and walked toward the glass doors of the lobby. The morning sun was bright, spilling across the busy downtown street. She stepped out into the fresh air, feeling a profound sense of lightness. For 10 years, she had let people like Marcus dictate her worth because she preferred the quiet comfort of her work over the loud confrontation of office politics. She had let them mistake her silence for weakness and her simple clothes for a lack of ambition. But Clara knew the truth. Wealth wasn't about the watch on your wrist or the title on your door. True power was ownership. It was knowing exactly what you held in your hands and having the quiet discipline to wait for the exact right moment to play your cards. She pulled her phone from her pocket. She had a meeting with the Horizon executives at noon to sign the new licensing deal, a deal that would secure her financial independence for the rest of her life. Without Marcus skimming the profits or Valerie claiming the credit, behind her, through the thick glass of the lobby, she could see Marcus sinking into one of the coffee shop chairs, his head in his hands, completely undone by a single clause he had never bothered to read. Clara didn't gloat. She didn't look back to relish in his misery. She simply adjusted her comfortable loafers, shifted her simple tote bag on her shoulder, and walked down the street toward her new future, leaving them exactly what they had asked for, everything they deserved, and nothing more.